The 2026 Japanese Grand Prix just took place. Let's look at how each driver and team has performed, starting with the worst performing team, ending with the highest scorers of the Grand Prix. The first team is Aston Martin, and these guys had a great race. If you put things in perspective, Fernando Alonso for Aston Martin for the first time in 2026 has completed the full race distance, and this is big news. If you guys put things in perspective, as I just mentioned, they missed testing entirely. Their engine was a vibrator, basically, and it was such a horrible experience driving that car. The NVH was so bad that neither of the drivers could actually drive it the full race distance because it was so physically painful and demanding. Fortunately, some of those woes, to some degree, have been resolved. They have also bought some aerodynamic upgrades. The front wing was different. Few other small tweaks were there. They're still pushing hard to continually develop their car. And for a team that has missed testing entirely and were significantly behind schedule when it comes to engine manufacturing, they really had a good race. They turned the page, and it's only going to be positive from now on, especially if you think that now there is 1 month of gap. We don't have any of the Middle Eastern races, thank God, like except for Bahrain. The Bahrain Grand Prix is the only race that we're gonna miss because there we actually see some on-track action, unlike the other shit tracks. But in 2026, based on how everything is determined by energy management, I think we could have also seen some overtakes in the Middle Eastern races, but I guess we'll never know. And that 1 month of gap that we have until Miami is going to massively benefit Aston Martin in order to get their ducks in a row better. We move on. Cadillac. Now they also had a better race. Again, if you put things in perspective, because this is the first time in 2026, this is the third ever race for the team, and they have finished, and both of the cars have finished the race. Sergio Perez was slightly more competitive compared to Valtteri Bottas, so he had some problems, Valtteri I'm talking about, compared to Sergio Perez, but at the same time they definitely need to go and unlock more and more performance from the car, and they definitely should have a few low-hanging fruits, if you know what I'm saying. So first thing is, they are using the Ferrari engine, and the Ferrari engine seems like a good power unit when it comes to recharging the battery and also maintaining an overall baseline performance. We can see this in Haas, we can see this in the Ferrari Works team. So obviously they have some low-hanging fruits that they can pick in order to bump up their performance and start fighting for higher up positions like, the Williams and things like that, which is actually horrible for Williams. But they are looking good, and Sergio also said in the post-race interview that they are definitely bringing some, not some, but huge amount of significant upgrades for the next race in Miami. So things are looking positive for the American team. Third Grand Prix ever in 2026, and the regulations are very complex. The cars are very complex because it's all about energy deployment and programming. All of the computer nerds need to get things right, and these guys seem to be getting on the groove of it, and they're, as a team, they're functioning much better, and the 1 month of gap ahead is going to help these teams the most, them and Aston Martin. So I guess we will see in Miami how strong these two guys are. Sergio Perez had good performances in Miami. Valtteri Bottas, I don't think he ever raced in Miami, or did he? But either way, it seems like Cadillac are on a good trajectory. This is the first time, I think in the first race they had one DNF. In the second race they had also one DNF in the form of Valtteri Bottas. And in the third race, both of the cars managed to finish the race, if I remember things correctly. So again, another team on the right trajectory. I guess we will see how things pan out in the remainder of the season. We move on. Williams. So after taking a massive step back from the 2025 Formula One season, these guys are, not making any kind of visible progress. The only kind of progress, or the only kind of positive, if you are a Williams fan, is that they finished the race, I guess. Because in no way, they're not at all competitive in any way, shape, or form. If you're getting beaten by Audi, a team that has made their engine from scratch, in terms of pure race based on qualifying performance, then it's a bad news. It's really bad news, and these two guys need to get not these two guys, but like the team needs to get their shit together. There's not much to say about either Alex Albon or Carlos Sainz, only about Carlos Sainz that Carlos did have a good race based on the fact that he finished ahead of Alex. Also, it seems like Carlos is extracting more performance and pace out of the car compared to Alex. So, and also in qualifying, we heard that Alexander Albon was upset with his own driving style. So maybe there are also a few low-hanging fruits for Alex Albon in order to unlock some performance and close the gap to the smooth operator. When Carlos joined the team in 2025, everybody suggested that Alexander Albon's real test begins now because his other teammates have been dummies in the form of, Nicolas Latifi and, some other people. But now in 2026, it's clearly visible to me and to a lot of other people that Carlos Sainz is definitely the better driver of these two. I mean, Alex is quick too. Alex's racecraft is also proper. He's also good. He's the only Max Verstappen's teammate who actually was competitive compared to other Max Verstappen teammates. Isaac Hadjar is, changing all of it. But either way, focusing on the Williams drivers, they're shit. And they need to get their shit together. I don't know how, because, I'm extremely stupid to be in any of the Formula One teams. However, their pace doesn't look strong. And again, if they're being beaten by Haas, if they're being beaten by freaking Audi, like I said, and it looks like in a few races time, okay, so the next race is Miami. Let's say by the time we go to Spa, I think Williams are going to be beaten by either Cadillac or Aston Martin or both, based on how things are going, because there is zero progress from race 1 to race 3 by Williams in terms of pace, in terms of race execution, in terms of understanding the car to get the maximum out of it, in terms of mastering the energy deployment situation, because every team has to set up or do some coding or programming with the the energy management software or some shit. So they are also making zero progress in that regard as well. So this is the only team that is not making any progress, and in a world, in a sport where everything is so fast, you're gonna get fucked up. We move on. Audi. So some positives, some negatives. The positives are that these guys still have a little bit of baseline pace, and it's a little bit track specific. On races where other people have misfortunes, they seem to go ahead and pick up some points. And if they qualify really well, they manage to hold on to those positions. But at the same time, once they start going back and once they lose a couple of positions, it's very difficult for these guys to recover them. I think Gabriel Bortoledo got screwed by the safety car. I don't think he was. But anyway, it wouldn't have mattered. Like, that's the main thing that I'm trying to say. That on a race where not many people have the misfortune, because only Lance Stroll retired and he was behind these two guys anyway, the only retirement that happened from the front of these two guys was Oliver Bearman. But even then, only one real retirement from Audi's perspective was not enough for these two guys to go ahead and score some points. They needed one more retirement, and Nico Hülkenberg would have been in the points. So the thing about Audi is that even though they're ahead of Williams and Aston Martin and Cadillac, they're not really any more competitive. They're faster than 3 teams, like I said. But you have to also understand that they're also a brand new team. Not as brand new as Cadillac, but definitely a brand new team, because they're going through a lot of changes. Jonathan Wheatley has left because of money reasons, allegedly. And they have their own engine from scratch and, new chassis and everything, just like everybody else. But they have their own unique engine that no other team is using. So they have very limited data in that regard, very limited benchmark comparisons in that regard. So if you look at everything, they're doing a decent job, but at the same time, they're in a very precarious / dangerous position, in the sense that they're only faster than Williams, Cadillac, and Aston Martin. Aston Martin, they're running behind in the engine development. That's why they got locked out. Cadillac is the complete brand new team, that's what they're behind, and Williams are a bunch of retards, that's why they took a step back from 2025. Obviously, Audi needs to step their game up and unlock more performance, because if they stay here, they're basically dependent on luck in order to score some points. If other people ahead of them will have some misfortunes, will have some problems, and they get a little bit good position in qualifying and a little bit of luck with the safety car, then I guess these guys can hold their own up to a certain extent. But at the same time, in terms of race pace, they're nowhere. So they also need to step their game up in the 30 days vacation that is coming up. And I hope these two guys, become more competitive in the midfield so we can have some nice, good battles. We move on. Haas. Actually, these guys had a pretty good race. So a thing about Oliver Behrman. So Oliver Behrman, first of all, extremely happy that he is okay. He was my favorite rookie in 2025, and he is still one of my favorite drivers in the 2026 Formula 1 season. So I'm extremely happy that he's okay. He was running ahead of Esteban Ocon, if I want to say. I just want to say that. But in going out, he kind of ruined Esteban's race, because, Esteban just pitted and, the safety car kind of screwed him, yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, Esteban Ocon, as much as I hate his guts, drove a better race. He actually drove a good race. If you were screwed by the safety car and the midfield is so packed, and it's a long, grueling race, and you have to think about energy management every step of the way, and tire management is also a bit sometimes in Japan. Nobody really tested the hard tires that much in the practice sessions, including Haas. If you put all those things in perspective, Esteban Ocon finishing P10, scoring a point, bring it home, is actually a phenomenally good performance. Now, obviously, I'm not saying he's the driver of the day or should deserve the driver of the day, but overall, Esteban's performance was actually pretty good. And if you look at the season so far, if Oliver Behrman actually made it to the end of the race, Haas will still be the four teams who has finished all of the races. The four teams being Mercedes, Ferrari, then Alpine, and Haas, but now Oliver Behrman DNF, so there are actually three teams who has finished all of the races. Both drivers, I mean. But if you look at Haas, they have scored points in every competitive session that they could score points in. So for example, in Melbourne, Behrman scored points. In China, Sprint Behrman scored points. In China main race, I think both of these two guys scored some points. In Japan, Esteban Ocon, despite being screwed by the safety car triggered by Behrman's crash, scored a point. Oliver Behrman was actually trying to overtake Franco Colapinto from the outside before going into the spoon. Was it the spoon? Anyway, so he was trying to overtake Franco Colapinto, but for some reason, Behrman forgot that Colapinto is a genius when it comes to defense, because in China, Franco Colapinto on worn tires kept both of these two Haas drivers behind him for multiple laps. That's how good he was in defending. So Oliver Behrman, for some reason, forgot that Franco Colapinto is a legend when it comes to defensive driving. And then, unfortunately, when he was trying to go around the outside of Franco in order to go ahead and make a move, Franco Colapinto just, kept his steering wheel a little bit open, ran him wide, and Behrman was actually carrying a lot of speed, and obviously all he could do at that time, react in a moment, go off the track in order to take evasive action, and then, once you're on the grass, there is really no mechanical grip, and the wheels were locked because he slammed on the brake. And in that moment, you're just a passenger because you have so much momentum, right? So you're going to glide through, and, he had a couple. I don't think he spun. Spinning would have saved Oliver Behrman, but he didn't spin around. He just went through the polystyrene bollards and then just across the track, went into the barriers. Severe hit, limped outside of the car. Luckily, he is fine. And now there is 30 days of time for him to recover and look at the data and reanalyze the situation and see where he did wrong. And I'm pretty sure he's going to come out stronger, and he will be the better driver of these two in the course of the full season. We move on. Racing Bulls. Another amazing race by these two. So first, you have to understand that Arvid Lindblad. So let's quickly talk about Lindblad, and then we will move to Liam Lawson, because Liam Lawson has been lighting things on fire in this season. So I don't remember if Liam Lawson scored a point in China Sprint. but he scored a point in the Chinese Grand Prix and also now in Japanese Grand Prix a couple of points. But Erwin Lindblad, overall, he also had a good performance. In qualifying, he was faster than Max Verstappen, which is saying something. I mean, Isaac Hadjar was also faster than Max Verstappen, so we'll talk about him and we'll talk about him. But Lindblad was also faster than Max Verstappen, and he knocked Verstappen out in Q2. And then, obviously, he had a slow pit stop, and then he was also screwed by the safety car. If you look at all of these things, finishing P14 is not that bad because of the slow pit stop. His pit stop was like 4.8 seconds. So that's definitely not ideal. So he lost a position there. Then he lost a couple more positions because of the safety car situation. He pitted right before the safety car. So that totally screwed Lindblad up. And if you look at how closely bunched up the midfield is, it's kind of evident, in that way, like there's not much you can do from that position. And you are a rookie, energy management is tricky. He also lost a couple of positions because he was not as adept at, managing the energy and, deploying it at the right part of the circuit, which is unfortunately what this era of regulations is all going to be about. I'm going to make a whole new video about why this is like an energy management competition rather than racing on a pure level. But Lindblad, he's a rookie. He's not, he still needs to learn a few tricks of the trade, and he is going to. He is really quick, and we have seen it in his qualifying pace. He was P8 at a moment, and then he lost the position to, I think, Isaac Hadjar, and then also to Max and all those type of things. And only way ahead is up. He was a little bit unlucky with the pit stop and the safety car, blah, blah, blah. Yada, yada, yada. These type of things happen in racing. It's just part of the game. Now, moving on to Liam Lawson. This guy has been on a redemption arc since the 2026 Australian Grand Prix. So in 2026 Australia, he had a bad race and he couldn't score any point, and Erwin Lindblad became the talk of the town. He's the rookie. He was P3 at the first, at a point in the lap, and he was fighting everyone, and he was, strong, and he had a good pace. He scored points on debut, etc., etc. And it kind of put the pressure on Liam Lawson from there, but he delivered. He delivered in China and now also in Japan. It was a tricky race in Japan. Everybody was chaotic. Everything was chaotic, like on a certain degree. But fortunately, Liam Lawson, big shout out to him, New Zealander, is doing proud. So let's see how well he can improve. The only issue I have with Liam Lawson is the same issue that he had in 2025 all season, was his qualifying performance. If he can just qualify better, because his race execution is phenomenal. Like one time in 2024 where he replaced Daniel Ricciardo, in the 2024 United States Grand Prix in Austin, I think he started P19 or something and finished P9. So his race management is actually very good. He can manage the tires. He can, think ahead of the game, and he can, position his car properly, take advantage of other people's misfortunes, yada, yada, yada. His race execution is actually very good when, things don't get extremely unlucky for him. But at the same time, his qualifying has been a recurring issue, like since last year. Since last year, Isaac Hadjar was phenomenal at qualifying compared to Liam Lawson. And Liam Lawson is still struggling in qualifying relatively compared to a rookie. And this shouldn't happen. You shouldn't struggle that much in qualifying compared to your rookie teammate. So that's a thing that he needs to sort out. And that's probably one of the primary reasons why his Red Bull promotion is being blocked. And judging by how Max Verstappen, how much dissatisfaction Verstappen has with this era of regulations and the cars and the type of racing we are seeing, Liam Lawson really does have a shot at the other Red Bull seat, because Max Verstappen may retire, may choose to leave the sport because of how shit it has been for him, like especially with all those things happening. So if Liam just gets his qualifying right, then I'm pretty sure he's going to be turning some heads in the paddock. People will want him because his race-based execution, like I said, is very good. Lindblad, long way to go. Great, amazing, promising driver. Good pace, balls of steel. But, he needs to be a little bit wise and also a little bit lucky, is what I'm trying to say. So we move on. Red Bull Racing. So Isaac Hadjar kind of had like a painful-ish type of race. There's, not much he could have done. based on where he was. I mean, he had some decent battles with a lot of people, then he had some battery deployment. I mean, this is a fucking problem with the entire up and down grid. All of the drivers who are losing positions are not losing positions just because they have a skill issue or they made a mistake in some turns or anything like that. It's just because everything in this 2026 season and this era of regulations is decided by battery. If you're overtaking and finishing ahead, it means you had battery. If you're being overtaken and if you're falling behind, then it's because of battery. Not a lot goes into skill. You don't need to be that skilled. I think Fernando Alonso said that half the team members in Aston Martin can drive the car, because right now, there is no high speed corner. Everything is just medium speed and low speed. And Alex Albon also said this. There is no high speed corner anymore. There is no racecraft anymore. There is no, this agility of drivers that we used to have, where the drivers need to be fast, they need to be calm, they need to be sharp, and they have to rely on their skill and intuition and instinct in order to extract the maximum performance out of the car, sometimes on the track in the heat of the battle. None of that shit is going to happen in 2026 and this era of regulation, because everything is governed by battery. Because of battery, Max Verstappen is having bad starts, Isaac Hadjar lost a bunch of positions, and there's really not much to talk about these two guys. Their engine is actually good. The overall race pace, if you look at the Red Bull Racing, is slightly faster than Alpine, but I would not say it's faster than Alpine. I would say that their race pace is slower than Alpine. Verstappen in the post-race interview suggested that their race pace is slightly faster than Alpine, but I don't think it is that fast that we can say it's fast. It's in the same ballpark. Both of them have the same ballpark. So this is actually a really concerning thing for the entire Red Bull camp, because now they're behind Alpine. And I guess Alpine are making some progress, because in the first and Alpine is another team that is actually making some significant progress, right? So we talked about Aston Martin, who have made some progress. We talked about Cadillac, the brand new team, who made some progress. We talked about Haas in relation to their previous season, in comparison to the previous season, have made some progress, and so does Racing Bulls. Alpine has also made a leap, and they made such a good leap that Red Bull is now behind them. And Red Bull really did fall back. The performance of Max Verstappen in the season opener, where he started P20 and finished P6, was kind of... what is the word that I'm looking for? The performance of Max Verstappen, where he earned Driver of the Day in the season opener for 2026, was kind of not a complete picture of what the package is capable of. Let's put it that way. Because right now we are seeing that their car has a lot of issues. At the race start, these two guys are having battery harvesting and deployment issues, for which they're losing much of positions at the start of the race. And then also through the race, they're also experiencing issues. Verstappen DNF'd in China, Isaac Hadjar DNF'd in Australia, and now Isaac Hadjar also had some battery deployment challenges, for which he lost a couple of positions in Japan. Verstappen kind of had a decent-ish race, and he also was complaining about the battery, but obviously that's a real issue, not just with Verstappen, but with the entire sport of Formula 1 right now. But overall, their package is not that good, and I think it's because Adrian Newey has left the team. Every time there has been a regulation change in Formula 1, Red Bull kind of showed up with a good package. Like even in the turbo hybrid era, which was dominated by Mercedes, I wouldn't say the Red Bull car was particularly slow, because with time they actually became fast. With 2016, 2017, 2018, they actually started to become fast. Not as fast as Mercedes, but they were screwed a little bit more because of their engine reliability issues, because they were using Renault power units. But since they switched to Honda power units, they actually became extremely competitive, and in 2021, boom, Verstappen became the world champion. The point that I'm trying to make here is that because Adrian Newey left, I think that these guys made a bunch of wrong turns when designing their car for 2026 regulations, and I think their car is just an unstable mess. Verstappen has said multiple times that the car is undrivable, I cannot understand anything, it's just shaking up and down, and there's not much I can do. Isaac Hadjar seems to be able to extract some pace out of it, especially in qualifying. He's very good at qualifying, and it shows in performance as well. But right now, I think Verstappen is like too frustrated and too old to give a shit about this type of cars. He's just coming in, doing his job, and going home, not really thinking too much because the car is shit. So their now the primary goal of Red Bull, is to actually make sure that the car is stable, it's predictable from corner to corner, and then they can focus on the energy deployment and the programming issue. They do have some good race pace though, so I guess there is some positives that they can take away from it. We move on. Alpine. After the first race of the 2026 Formula 1 season, I kind of said that Alpine were kind of dum-dums. And the reason why I said that is because they were horrible in Australia. And the reason why that was very bad news for Alpine, because they sacrificed 2025 so that they could have a good start in 2026 and have a good 2026 season. The start was horrible. But now, race 3 looks like they're gaining some performance. Because in China, both of these two guys were in points. In Japan, it looked like both of these two guys could have been in points because Franco Colapinto was looking good for P10 or even a P9. But he was screwed by the safety car and, a bunch of other issues as well, he was saying. So if you put things in perspective, they are actually making progress. And with the 30 days of break between now and Miami, I'm pretty sure they're going to come up with some more aerodynamic and chassis side of upgrades. And the more they understand about the engine and the battery deployment, I think they can get closer and closer to Mercedes. Today we saw in the first stint that Mercedes Power McLaren was actually competitive enough with Mercedes Power Mercedes, the works team. So I'm pretty sure in the engine department, they have more performance to unlock. When I say they, I mean Alpine. They have more performance to unlock. If they can figure out the software tweaking and the freaking whatever, the nerdy programming type of setup, because that's what you need to do these days in order to get ahead. It's not really about driving talent or skill. It's about how good you are at, managing the battery power. If they figure those things out, they can definitely go even further ahead in the field. Maybe they can join the battle of McLaren versus Ferrari. One can only dream. Pierre Gasly is extremely good and Franco Colapinto is a monster when it comes to defending, but right now it looks like Alpine has a solid position in the midfield. Like they're around the pace of the Haas, and if these trends continue, they're definitely going to be much faster than them in the upcoming races. So big shout out to Pierre Gasly, the Max Verstappen of this team. And they have a really good, solid, stable foundation. He's also qualifying really good. Q3 appearances, back to back. And he is doing it on merit. It's not a fluke. It's not like Pierre Gasly is just benefiting from the misfortune of others in order to get through into Q3. He's actually doing it on merit and skill and performance with car. I'm very excited. I genuinely hope Gasly wins a couple of races this season, but that's probably not going to happen. But I can only dream, right? So Pierre Gasly probably going to be a race winner in 2026, and judging by the rate of progress that Alpine has been making in the first 3 races of the season, it is a possibility, and we need to dream. We move on. Ferrari. There are a couple of things I want to say about Ferrari. First is, they had a good race. Charles Leclerc, much deserved podium, fought tooth and nail with George Russell. Lewis Hamilton, regardless of how sad he was in front of the media and all that, he kind of also had a good race. So Lewis actually made a few mistakes due to which he was screwed. The first mistake he made at the restart, because let's talk about the restart, Lewis Hamilton was running P3 after the restart. So after the restart, he overtook George Russell and he was in P3 position, and then Charles Leclerc overtook George Russell. So there was a car between Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. So Lewis could have played his cards right in order to secure P3s. But here's what happened. He started attacking Oscar Piastri, and that's where things went wrong. So when Lewis was attacking Oscar Piastri, he was slipping and sliding all over the place. And the commentators were talking about it. And he was slipping and sliding all over the place, exiting, into the back straight, and also in the last chicane, in those areas he was just sliding, obviously. And if you're sliding in a Formula One car, you're killing the tires, you're overheating the patches, and there are going to be some, roughed up patches on the tire, which is going to affect your overall performance. And also you will grain the tires much more faster. As simple as that. So that's the first issue with Lewis Hamilton, because had he just held his ground and not attack Piastri, and I know it's extremely hard to do when you are a 7-time world champion and you're gunning for 8th. It's very hard to do that. And when you see, Oscar Piastri, a McLaren, a team that is not as fast as Ferrari in 2026, it's kind of enticing for Lewis to go and attack. But at the same time, Lewis should have been informed by his pit wall that Oscar Piastri is extremely fast, because Oscar Piastri was holding off George Russell by pure pace in the first stint. He was. But obviously Lewis Hamilton didn't get the message, or maybe he was just too caught up in the moment trying to push, and he kind of killed his tires a little bit. So there, obviously, eventually with time, Charles Leclerc had his tires ready and he warmed them up properly, and then he just had a lot more pace and he overtook Lewis Hamilton. Another thing that screwed Lewis Hamilton, and this was where Lewis didn't have any control, was his energy deployment issues. So he was struggling with energy deployment issues throughout the entire race, and he also had similar-esque type of issue in the Chinese sprint. But also in China sprint, if you remember, in China sprint, Lewis Hamilton wasted his tires battling George Russell, and then Charles Leclerc was just behind Lewis, waiting to pick up the pieces, and then he picked up the pieces. And then Charles Leclerc got on the podium in the China sprint. Lewis Hamilton should have remembered that, should have held on to that lesson and not punish his tires too much trying to attack Oscar Piastri. Because he just needed to ease into it, warm his tires up gently, and just hold the position, and this podium would have been his. Leclerc is a monster when it comes to defending, especially if he's defending against George Russell, and he would have kept Russell behind. So one of the things that Lewis needs to do is not get too greedy, and this is something Charles Leclerc has been practicing since 2022, because he's in a Ferrari, and if you push the Ferrari too hard, then you make a mistake and bad things happen. So Lewis kind of needs to, I would say, be more strategic in his race execution, and also obviously when your car is literally having energy deployment issues, there's not much you can do. Moving on to Charles, what a great race. What a great race. Now, I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan, so obviously I want him to finish ahead of Charles. So it's going to be very difficult for me to see Charles overtake Lewis. But at the same time, the driving skills of Charles and the way he defends, the way he deploys his energy. So first, what Charles would do is he would not deploy that much energy in the back straight, and then he will deploy it all in the start-finish line in order to, repass the car that has passed him. So that's a very strategic way in which Charles is doing it. And he also is, like a fox. You know what I mean? Like, Charles waits until the guys ahead ruin their tires, and he just waits and picks up the pieces. He did it in China sprint. He did it again in 2026 Japanese Grand Prix. So when he was seeing that Lewis is pushing the car too hard in order to fight PS3 and try to get the position, he was patiently waiting. He was patiently waiting, and he knew that his moment will come, and it eventually did. And then he just went past. And then the defensive driving he did against Osama bin Russell, especially when he, repassed Osama bin Russell in lap 51, I think, 2 laps to go. Takes balls, man. So Charles Leclerc, driver of the day, in my opinion, because of his defensive driving skills. What a great driver, man. What a great, energetic driver. It's a shame that he has not been, consistently fighting for world championships, because Ferrari is just fucking it up. And also, in 2026, Mercedes is extremely quick. So it doesn't look like 2026 is going to be the year where Charles fights for world championships, and neither is Lewis. But, You gotta give him credit where credit is due. Charles Leclerc, one of the best drivers. I mean, it's not like I particularly dislike Charles. I mean, I like Charles very much, but compared to Lewis, I like him a little bit less because I'm a Lewis fan. So, but at the same time, man, Leclerc highly deserves P3, maybe even P2, but Piastri was also very quick. So, anyway, it is what it is. I guess we will see in Miami what happens, a street circuit, or even though it's not really a street circuit. So, we will see what kind of magic these guys can come up with in Miami. We move on. The McLaren boys. Change of fortune, right? So a couple of things I want to say is that it looks like McLaren can be the team to close the gap to Mercedes and challenge them for the championship. It is possible because first they have the same power unit, and it's a matter of time before these smart motherfuckers figure out the energy deployment programming thing, right? And it seems like in 2026 Japanese Grand Prix, the race that we just had, they did make a significantly huge step in that direction, especially in Oscar Piastri's car. Because Piastri, pure pace, I mean, obviously he had clean air, and in battery deployment, he was also smart because he was using battery a little bit just to give him a little bit of pace in the back straight. 130R went through the chicane, and then he used his battery massively in the start-finish straight to stay ahead. Because in the SS, you can recharge, and there's not really a real overtaking opportunity until the back straight again, and then his battery will be recharged again. So in terms of all those things, I think McLaren are definitely making a step forward. Lando Norris, he kind of had a normal race, started P5, finished P5. He had a good start, but overall his pace compared to the pace of George Russell's Mercedes was not there. And also the second stint of Kimi Antonelli was like through the roof. Kimi Antonelli pulled I think 15 seconds. I think Kimi finished 14 seconds or something ahead of Oscar Piastri, and Oscar Piastri was right behind him at the safety car restart. And it's not like Kimi Antonelli pulled the 15 seconds in the entire race distance. He did it in like half the race distance, a little bit more than half. But was it less than half race distance, if I'm being honest, if I can remember it right, because it was around lap 30 that we went back racing, and Kimi Antonelli from then till the checkered flag, he pulled around 13 to 14 seconds. So Kimi's pace in the second stint in the hard tires were actually through the roof compared to the McLaren boys. But at the same time, McLaren's pace was significantly faster than Ferrari. McLaren closed the gap to Ferrari, and they are now faster than Ferrari. It's a big news. A lot of the mainstream media people are going to miss this. But, I'm not mainstream media, so I didn't. And it looks like McLaren are going to be ahead of Ferrari. And this is going to be a McLaren versus Ferrari if Ferrari doesn't get their shit together. And it doesn't look like they're going to get their shit together. So it's going to be McLaren versus Mercedes after, I would say, Monza. So we will wait until Monza, where McLaren will be consistently the second fastest team on the grid if they get up and running. And after Monza, these guys will significantly close the gap to Mercedes. So I guess we will see if they can take the fight. In terms of experience, these two guys are okay-ish compared to George Russell, but compared to Kimi Antonelli, I think both of these two drivers have a significant advantage. Now that Lando Norris is a world champion, the moment you become a world champion, you become a better driver by 30%. People say that. I don't know if it is true. I'm yet to see it. Lando's performance has been decent, extracts the maximum out of the car and did what he could do. Overtook Lewis Hamilton in the dying stages of the Japanese Grand Prix, so very well-deserved P5. Good performance by both of these two guys, especially Oscar Piastri. But I'm excited to see how these two guys can continue to, push their car forward, because right now they're faster than both of the Ferraris, is all I'm trying to say. So we will see how things develop in Miami. And last year in Miami, and the year before that also in Miami, the McLaren driver won. So this year it could happen. It's looking difficult, but we'll see what happens. We move on. Finally, Mercedes. Okay. Kimi Antonelli's back-to-back wins has actually spiced up the championship battle. Now he is leading the world championship. All he needs to do is get his race start proper, and then he can very well become the 2026 Formula One world champion. Very well become. And the reason is because if Kimi Antonelli gets a good start at the race, the Ferraris will catch Russell, and Russell is going to lose a little bit of time battling them, going through them, and by this time Kimi Antonelli will disappear into the distance. That's basically what he needs to do. But on the other hand, if you look at things from a practical perspective, George Russell is still the favorite. Now, the only reason why George Russell is not leading the world championship right now is because in China he had a problem in the battery during the qualifying session. That's why he was P2 at the start, and then he lost some positions to the Ferraris and then eventually recovered. But by this time Kimi Antonelli flew away and he won the race in China. Now again in Japan, George Russell looked like he was the guy to beat. He had a decent-ish race start and he was challenging Oscar Piastri for the win, although Oscar Piastri was holding his own. But then he got literally screwed massively by the safety car. And we all like to see it. We all like to see the serious guy, getting unlucky, and the new kid getting a little bit of luck and then also capitalizing on it. Dodged a bullet there. Really, Kimi Antonelli's race start was horrendous. He was P1. He started from pole position, dropped to P6. So horrendous race start by Kimi Antonelli. But, when you have luck, none of that matters. So now a winner in the 2026 Japanese Grand Prix. He's the winner in Suzuka. And in the upcoming race in Miami, last year in Miami Sprint, Kimi Antonelli had pole. So he knows the track well. And it's going to be a challenge for George Russell. So George Russell is looking for vengeance, and Kimi Antonelli is just gradually building his rhythm. And we never know. There are 20 races in this season, 3 of which have just been finished. So 17 more races to go. And let's see which of these two guys, any one of these two guys are going to be the world champion. We can see it. They are 8 tenths, like 5 tenths, 6 tenths faster than everybody else in qualifying. And Kimi Antonelli was, pulling away from Oscar Piastri after the safety car restart like it was like 2 different categories. So these two guys' race pace advantage and qualifying advantage and also the chassis advantage is significantly through the roof. So nobody else other than these two guys have a realistic shot at becoming the world champion in this season. But at the same time, it's going to be funny if Kimi Antonelli wins, because George Russell is clearly, if you look at the experience and the mindset, George Russell is kind of the better driver. But Kimi Antonelli, even with less experience, he has taken the fight to George, and he is there. Whenever there is misfortune, whenever there is, luck that is handed to him, he can capitalize on that luck and convert. We have to understand that. Okay, yes, Kimi Antonelli kind of inherited the lead after the safety car and got a chance to redo his race after a horrendous start. And he was also stuck behind, Hamilton and Norris and all those people. And George Russell kind of sliced through and went to P2 and battling and challenging Piastri. But Kimi Antonelli was kind of stuck in the traffic. He still needs to gain some experience in overtaking Kimi Antonelli. But if you still see overall, the guy has pace. So if he just qualifies on pole and has a good race start and he finds himself in clear air, he becomes unbeatable. So that's the thing about Kimi Antonelli. But George Russell, on the other hand, he can recover from bad races. Like, that's the key thing we need to understand about George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. If Kimi is on pole and has a good start, okay, he's going to win. But George Russell, even if he had a relatively bad start, he can still recover and put the pressure on Kimi Antonelli in some part of the way. So I guess we will see. It'll be interesting to see which one of these two guys become the world champion in 2026 Formula 1 season. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.